Engin Terzi has been competitively arm wrestling for a very long time. With his legacy growing ever larger, he now stands at the base of what has quickly become the biggest and most prestigious arm wrestling promotion of the modern age. But how did a young Turkish florist eventually evolve into a man who is now inseparable from the greater arm wrestling culture? And what were the triumphs as well as tribulations that happened along the way? I am the arm historian, and rather than blindly praising Engin Terzi or unabashedly sensationalizing the controversy surrounding the man, in this video I will attempt to provide a true unbiased account on the full history of Engin Terzi as a part of arm wrestling. Engin Terzi was born on the 18th of November 1974 in the ancient city of Ankara, the capital of Turkey. The city has close ties to several major civilizations throughout antiquities, and is even fabled to be founded by the illustrious King Midas. As far as birthplaces go, Engin is certainly in good company, as Ankara has undoubtedly been a breeding ground for great warriors and sages from history. Engin's family owned a flower shop, and his father was, by Engin's own account, a strong man. Engin himself, however, even by the time he was 16, describes himself as a quite weak teen with a diminutive stature, who wasn't even capable of beating his own mother or sister in arm wrestling. The young Terzi made up for that though, with what he would go on to call an unwillingness to lose or give up, and a tendency towards anger at certain moments, even at such a young age. What was obvious though was that he clearly enjoyed competing, but also watching other people test their strengths, with arm wrestling being a natural conduit for that. Eventually, the Terzi family decided to move to a smaller city and settled down in Yalova, continuing the family floristry business by opening up another shop and greenhouse. By this time, now the early 90s, Engin was also running a small flower gallery by the Yalova seaside. Arm wrestling had become a casual yet regular pastime for the young man and his friends, and when he was not selling flowers, he could therefore often be found testing his strength by arm wrestling on the hoods of cars or anywhere where he and his friends could find a flat surface. By the time 1991 rolled around, Engin was arm wrestling one of these friends at the flower shop when one of his regular customers walked in. Seemingly interested in the arm wrestling going on, the man asked to jump in and give it a try. Upon seeing this man in action though, Engin immediately realized something more advanced than he was used to was at play here. The man clearly used actual techniques on the table and efficiently beat his opponents, people Engin himself could not overcome while arm wrestling. While the mystery man gathered his flowers and left the shop, Engin couldn't resist running after him and inquiring how the man had acquired such a kind of arm wrestling prowess. Yücel Oxus had been a regional champion, and after an offer of free flowers from Engin, seemed very willing to help the young florist start his journey in competitive arm wrestling. He ended up providing Engin with a real arm wrestling table and taught him the basics of the sport. All he would ask in return was for Engin to find him opponents that would want to arm wrestle for money. 1.5 years on, now with some more experience under his belt but still relatively new to the sport, Engin participated in his very first arm wrestling tournament, opting for the Turkish Nationals, which was that year a sit-down single elimination event. He took only one loss late in the tournament to the then number 5 of the world in his weight class, eventually snagging a second place. Engin would later recount the significance of this outcome for ensuring his future in the sport.
If I somehow met him earlier rounds, I couldn't take, second place in nation. So maybe I would just imagine him meeting me first round, he flashing me twice. I would probably say that this sport is too hard for me. I would leave it.
This good result for what was essentially Engin's very first tournament, and that at a national level, lit a fire in his heart and would lead him to make a promise to himself to become world champion in only 2 years' time. From that point on, it seems arm wrestling would become an all-consuming entity within Engin's life, even going as far as tailoring all his social meetings around practicing the sport. Emboldened by this result though, the World Championships were in the cards for the young Turk, prompting him to travel to Canada for the event. At the 1993 WAF Worlds, Engin, now around 18 years old, gets a very commendable second place on the left arm in the 60 kg category. Although as a side note, the World Championships at that time alternated yearly between sit-down and stand-up matches, with the 1993 edition being a sit-down event. Now ramping up his training with a steady group of arm wrestlers in Turkey, he would often find himself arm wrestling some of the top guys in the nation and across many different weight categories. Engin would go on to claim a lot of the early success in his career came from training above his weight and with way more experienced people. One of the biggest local influences on his work ethic was the Turkish Terzi. Kurt, already a seasoned arm wrestler at that time, would go on to become the president of the Turkish Arm Wrestling Association, and a good relationship between himself and Engin would endure, with Kurt even showing up at and being involved with Engin's recent events. When the following year's World Championships were set to take place in Sweden, this time being a stand-up event, Engin wanted to participate but quickly found out the Turkish team was not attending, something that would make it nigh impossible for him to compete as an individual. Paying little mind to the powers that be though, and seemingly dead set on continuing his ascendancy in the sport, he set his mind to finding a way to participate anyway, asking friends and family to sponsor his journey to the tournament, as well as utilizing some keen social engineering when it came to dealing with Turkish bureaucracy. Our young protagonist would eventually find himself traveling to the small town of Södertälje, where the 1994 WAF World Championships would take place. Engin managed to take second place on the left arm in the 60 kg category and, staying true to the promise he made to himself 2 years earlier, won a hard-fought gold medal in the right arm 55 kg category, marking Terzi's first, but certainly not last, world title in arm wrestling. Since the early 1900s, a mandatory military enlistment has been in effect for every young Turkish male. The length of this conscription was 1 year to 1.5 years at the time Engin too would have been prompted to join the military, something he eventually did by the end of 1993. First serving in an infantry regiment as a recruit, he would later end up serving in the Ankara Presidential Guard Regiment, a highly sought-after position, hinting to some degree at Engin's aptitude as a soldier and general sense of love and patriotism for his native Turkey. During this time in the army, he would make plans to move to the USA and compete in their more active competitive arm wrestling circuit. He would also set it upon himself to study English as to get more proficient at the language for what he had planned. Finally, in 1996, Engin returned from his compulsory military service in the Turkish army and seemed quite eager to get back into competitive arm wrestling. He would make his way over to the United States, this time to the sun-kissed coasts of Virginia Beach, which was playing host to that year's edition of the WAF World Championships. Despite not training arm wrestling during his 18 months in the military, Terzi ended up taking second place on the left as well as right arm, taking a close loss to a young Lorenzo Villar. At the time, Engin took his second place as a tremendous loss, getting so distraught with his performance that he momentarily contemplated cutting off both arms as to no longer be faced with them and calling them useless. These feelings of dread and self-loathing would turn quickly to shame though, after a chance encounter shortly after his performance that year.
I went down and there was a guy that, he didn't have one leg, he didn't have one arm because of the accidents during the job. But whenever I look at him, he was so happy. He was so happy that he saw me. Someone from Turkey came and represented Turkey. He was just like so happy. At that moment, I felt so ashamed that, Engin, like, you are healthy, you're young. And what is that, maybe not number one in the world, but number two in the world. And look at what you are and look at the guy, that is just like with all these things, he can still be happy because he saw me, And at that moment, after that point, I never was that depressed about losing,
In 1997, 1 year on, it seems like Engin's previous plans of competing in and moving to the US were coming into fruition. While working as a tailor and living with a Turkish family in New York, he would reach out to Chris Anderson, a puller he had met at a previous tournament. Chris agreed for Engin to come live and train with him in Dixon, Missouri, while the two would make ends meet by doing roofing jobs and competing in every arm wrestling tournament they could find. One of the biggest and most stacked of those tournaments was the aptly titled Main Event, a tournament where Engin would end up taking first place in the 132-pound category, and the following year repeating that feat at the Main Event too, this time in the 154-pound category. He would also go on to compete in the infamous Petaluma Wrist Wrestling Championships in 1997 and would absolutely clean house by getting 5 first-place results, spread over 3 different weight classes between 2 arms. During these years, he also often competed in several state tournaments and won multiple weight categories, often up to 5 or 6 different ones. Engin would later look back on these years fondly and developed a brotherly band with his puller in crime, Chris Anderson. He would go on to describe himself as having a feeling of near invincibility and felt he was very strong during this time. Despite doing well in many more regional and bigger tournaments throughout the United States, it seemed Engin Terzi couldn't quite shake the allure of the WAF World Championships. He seemed determined to miss out on as few of them as humanly possible. In 1998, he snagged another gold medal on the right arm and a silver medal on the left, both in the 60 kg weight division. It's worth mentioning that technically this tournament was organized by a sort of splinter federation called the World Arm Sport Federation, which would go on to vie for dominance with the World Arm Wrestling Federation. The history and behind-the-scenes politics of this entire situation is long and complicated, and will therefore not feature in the scope of this video. During this time, however, word had reached Engin in the States that arm wrestling had become officially recognized as a sport in Turkey, and the government was handing out substantial grants to athletes that would do well on the official competitive circuits, prompting Engin to at times return to Turkey to compete in the Nationals, Europeans, and eventually World Championships. This feat earned him a rather large sum from the government, and therefore afforded Engin with some much-needed financial stability at the time. It's hard to overstate how decorated an athlete Engin Terzi would eventually become in the WAF circuits. One thing to remember up front is that throughout the years, even decades, Engin moved up in weight divisions but maintained his general dominance throughout. If you search for Engin Terzi arm wrestling on YouTube, you'll run into many videos showcasing the fact he holds the longest streak of first place victories, as well as winning those titles throughout 5 different weight categories. He not only continued to do well in the WAF scene on a European and world level, but also continued to compete frequently in various tournaments across North America. One notable series of tournaments from the 2000s that is on occasion still talked about to this day are the infamous Harley Pools. This series of tournaments, 8 in total, spread out over a period of 9 years, attracted some of the biggest talent of the region and beyond, probably not in small part due to the fact that its main prize was a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, along with a sizable prize purse for the runner-ups. Engin would participate in the Harley Pools in its first year, as well as the following year's edition in 2001, racking up multiple left-hand wins as well as one first place on the right in his weight category. In October of 2000, Engin would once again compete at the Worlds under the Arm Sport Federation and got a 5th place on the left, as well as a gold medal on the right in the 70 and 65 kg categories respectively. The following year, now 2001, he attained 2 more gold medals, one on each arm, at the World Championships held in Italy. This despite the fact that Engin was suffering from a serious illness leading up to the tournament. Unfortunately, Engin would shed any illusion of invincibility to an even bigger degree by accruing his first major injury during the tournament in Italy. At a certain point, Engin was set to face Anatoly Mayranzaev. Although Anatoly wasn't necessarily known as a top-tier arm wrestler by that time, he was one of the earliest adopters of a very specific move that, for some, would fall under heavy scrutiny. After the athletes had gone to straps, Mayranzaev showed no hesitation dropping into a pretty heavy King's move. Engin, not one to give up readily, forced a press, leading to a desperate battle between the two on the table. Eventually, Engin wins the hard-fought match, but the victory came at a serious cost, seriously injuring his right arm in the process. After getting surgery on his right arm, according to later testimony, Engin would never quite fully recover, citing overtraining and not enough rest time after the surgery. The way he dealt with his injury, something he still regrets to this day. Perhaps this match with Anatoly and the far-stretching consequences would lead Engin to develop a strong dislike, one could even say hate, towards the King's move. With him, to this day, still espousing the move should be illegal within competitive arm wrestling.
But whenever you go under the elbow pad level, then the problem starts the same as, the shoulder press. Your shoulder cannot pass the center.
If you want to learn more about the history of the King's Move, check out my video on the topic after you finished watching this one, of course. 1 year on, in 2002, however, the Worlds, this time under the Arm Wrestling Federation, were being held in Illinois in the USA. Still eager to compete there, but at first technically not allowed to, Engin eventually agreed to enter the tournament under the alias Arman Alpaslan, and battled his way up to a left-hand gold medal and right-hand silver medal, both in the 70 kg category. After yet again attaining multiple medals at the Worlds, Engin had found out about another tournament held at the US-Canada border only a few weeks on. Probably because of the potential for a good payout and workout, he decided to stay a while longer and eventually managed to get 2 first places on the left hand and 1 first place on the right hand at the 2002 Niagara Arm Wrestling Championship. This tag tournament, organized by Mark Zalepa, had managed to secure a sponsor that promised a total payout of $20,000, which in turn attracted some of the biggest names in arm wrestling at that point. Notable athletes of the time included Devin Larratt, Mike Gould, Crazy George, and Travis Bagent, amongst over another 160 participants. When all was said and done, Engin had accrued a healthy payout of approximately $2,700. When the time came for the athletes to collect their well-earned prize money, it came to light that the sponsor of the event had pulled out, apparently citing a lack of turnout to the event. Scrambling to come up with some kind of solution, the tournament organizers decided to divide the money they came up with from entry fees amongst the winning athletes. Since Engin had extended his stay in North America specifically to pull in this tournament, several athletes also decided to pitch in and provide him with at least a fraction of his promised winnings. These selfless acts of kindness shown to Engin on that day confirmed the rather high regard his peers already must have held him in. Now moving well and truly into the 2000s, as the internet started to become more widely available in regular households, discussions about arm wrestling started to move away from subscription-based magazines and move towards online message boards. One of, if not the largest of its kind, was the Northeast message board. Amongst a lot of other accomplished pullers and people deep within the bowels of the monster called arm wrestling addiction, Engin Terzi also started frequenting this forum. In many ways, for people within the community who hadn't yet met Engin in an organized event, this was their first point of direct contact with the young and eager Turkish arm wrestler. Although I'll probably cover it more deeply in a future video, the Northeast message board is still up to date and provides an interesting archive for anyone interested in the early online discussions surrounding our sport. During the following years, Engin would still travel throughout the world to participate in high-caliber tournaments. The 2003 USAA National Pro-Am Arm Wrestling Championship featured some of the top pullers from the United States at that time and looked to be another good opportunity for Engin to prove he was still at the top of the pack. He would end up doing exactly that by earning first place victories on both the left and right hand in the 154-pound category. One weight category up on the left arm, he also managed to garner a second place, narrowly losing out against a formidable Kenny Hughes. In March of 2005, Engin made his way down to Canada and signed up for what had quickly become the premier arm wrestling tournament of the region. Although first known as the Park Place Arm Wrestling Championship and then as the Central Ontario Arm Wrestling Championship, the Mike Gould Classic had world-class pullers competing like Devin Larratt and Travis Bagent. Engin looked to be up to the challenge though, as he handily took a first place finish in the 154-pound category on the left as well as the right arm. Ultimate Arm Wrestling was another rather big promotion from the USA that was organizing substantial tournaments in Las Vegas. In April of 2005, Engin decided to participate in its second edition, also known as the Pull at the Plaza in the United States Arm Wrestling Championship. This international arm wrestling extravaganza still stands as one of the most renowned and stacked tournaments of its time. Engin made a good showing that day by getting bronze medals on the right, as well as the left in the 154-pound category. It also marked the first time Engin had overcome Andrew Cobra Rhodes in a competitive setting, a formidable American puller who had developed a friendly rivalry with our Turkish protagonist throughout the years. 1 year on, now at the 2006 WAF Worlds in Manchester, an event where Engin won yet another gold medal on the left, this time in the 75 kg category, he would meet an up-and-coming Latvian puller who had, at this event, won a bronze medal in the women's junior category. In March of 2008, Engin Terzi stepped into holy matrimony with his fellow arm wrestler, the Latvian WAF medalist winner Sigita Krumina. It seems, however, Terzi's mind would before long be lured back in by the strong-willed siren called arm wrestling. In October of 2007, Engin made his way over to Bulgaria to once again prove himself on the world scene. He took a silver medal on both arms in the 70 kg category. By the end of 2007, he decided to participate in his very first Zloty Tour tournament. By this time, Zloty had become synonymous with highly competitive arm wrestling, hosting world-class pullers every year in many different weight categories. Engin took home a third-place finish on the left hand in the 78 kg category, a very commendable position considering the caliber of puller present. It wasn't until a decade later, though, that Engin would revisit the Zloty Tour stage, first finishing third place on the left as well as the right arm in the 70 kg category in 2017, and 1 year on doing even better when he won a gold medal on the left arm and a silver on the right arm. Now in the late 2000s, maybe as a sign of what was yet to come, as Engin's involvement with the arm wrestling community started to grow ever larger, he tried his hand at organizing some events himself. Although these were a lot smaller in scope than the events he would eventually go on to organize, they now stand as a little-known precursor to the modern-day East vs West events. The Istanbul International Friendship Night was first organized in 2009, featuring, as the name implies, international matches between big names in the sport. A second edition was subsequently put on the following year. The events had the likes of Travis Bajent, John Brzezinski, and Arsen Liliev amongst many others facing off in a supermatch format. Despite organizing tournaments, Engin also stayed active as a puller himself, competing in the 2009 WAF World Championships. At the end of the tournament, Engin walked away with a second place on the left arm in the 75 kg category, ending up above the likes of Yanis Amolins and Andrei Ciprianov in the standings. Throughout the next decade, Engin Terzi continued the tradition of entering the WAF Worlds, although not as frequently and mostly participating and doing well on the left arm. In 2011, he took a third place on that arm in the 75 kg category at the Worlds, but would soon after take a step towards the peripheries of competitive arm wrestling, at least for a while. However, Engin didn't shy away from competing in the occasional tournament or supermatch, and seems to have focused more on training other people and finding ways to promote the sport in a general sense. In 2015, though, the temptation seemed too big to resist for Engin, as he traveled to Kuala Lumpur for the WAF Worlds. Now eligible to compete in the Masters division too, he took home a gold medal on the left in the 70 kg Masters, as well as the 70 kg Seniors, proving that even after he took a small step back, his left was still at the top of the pack. In the following two editions of the World Championships, he continued to dominate the Masters class at 70 kg on the left, and even tried his hand at the 65 kg Senior class in 2018, surprisingly taking a gold medal there too. Despite Engin Terzi's many accolades and impressive resume in the sport by this time, the thing he would perhaps become most known for was yet to come. With the COVID pandemic sweeping the globe by 2019, most arm wrestling promotions were called to a halt. However, something that nobody could have foreseen happened for our still small sport. Arm wrestling would attract a newfound interest, sparked in large part by social media and general online coverage. However, by this time, Engin had for the most part retreated from arm wrestling discussions online and social media in general, but was prompted by one Neil Pickup to join him in an online arm wrestling podcast called In the Presence of Greatness. While reading the comments on these videos after the fact, Engin noticed the online arm wrestling world had seemingly exploded in popularity during the past few years and found itself solidly in an upwards trend. Because of this explosion in interest, a sudden need arose amongst arm wrestling's new as well as long-time fans and practitioners. Having made many connections within the arm wrestling world, as well as having tried his hand at tournament organizing before, Engin thought it would be worthwhile to try and fill that need himself. In March and April of 2021, the WAF International Challenge event was organized by Engin in Istanbul, Turkey. These two supermatch events seemed to be some kind of proof of concept for what was yet to come, although the true theme of pitting Eastern versus Western pullers against each other was not yet present at these events. Engin himself also competed in a supermatch versus Viorel Dobrin, one he handily took 5-0. The first official edition of East vs West was set for June of 2021 and featured 11 supermatches, one of which, once again, involved Engin himself. For his first match at his own event, he would be facing the Russian Artur Makarov on the right hand, and while it looked to be a close battle, Engin eventually had to withdraw after round 3 as he seriously injured himself. It's clear this match threw a serious spanner in the works for the return of Engin to the highest levels of the sport, even though right before the injury he looked quite formidable. The event itself did turn out successfully and showed a lot of promise for what was yet to come. Until this time, a lot of the best athletes in the world rarely met on the arm wrestling table, and some of the top contenders were hard-pressed to participate in even one match per year. Now, because of the proven financial viability of these kinds of supermatch events, like East vs West, a lot of athletes are able to compete on a semi-regular basis on a very high level. As of the creation of this video, 13 East vs West events have been produced, with addition 14 to be set in the USA on the way. I'll definitely go into more detail on East vs West as its own entity, but for the purposes of this video, I believe it's important to note that a big reason this promotion in particular is doing so well and even managed to start in the first place is the fact that Engin Terzi had built up connections with many of the top athletes in the sport and had experience with organizing events in the past. Being positively obsessed with anything arm wrestling related throughout all weight classes, as well as a deep knowledge of previous promotions and matchups, Engin looked to be, at least on paper, the perfect person to put these events on. As East vs West gained in popularity and became the main talking point every time one of the events rolled around, an ever larger growing contingent of content creators saw an opportunity to gear their videos towards the event. One of the ways they did that was by coinciding a livestream with the airing of the event, as to offer an alternative to official commentary.
Alrighty, ladies and gents, welcome to East vs West live commentary. I'm joined here with fellow arm wrestling commentator Jake Boyd.
Ready to hang!
Despite these live streams only featuring audio from the content creators talking about the event they were watching, this drew significant ire from the East vs West organization and was perhaps one of the early signs of a growing tension between Engin Terzi and a relatively small part of the online community. Engin was and certainly is not a man wary of confrontation and could be perceived as having little patience for critique, however unfounded they may be.
No, stop. I just don't want these people. These people are enemies of the sport. Trust me.
There's too many of them.
Listen, they are saying...
As many of you know, this kind of reactionary attitude is what feeds internet trolls and stokes them to attack even more. More importantly though, it might make it even more difficult to differentiate between real, well-intentioned critique on the one side and vapid, inflammatory comments on the other. Direct moderation and interaction with fans from the main man behind his organization, Engin Terzi, is, in my opinion, a good thing, or at least it can be. When something like East vs West grows to a certain scope, vetting of messages or delegating some of the online responsibilities might be the better way to go. As I understand it though, as of late, Engin seems to have started using this approach more and has, at least in my opinion, gained a more apt perspective on viewer interactions and critique, even going as far as making jokes about his own tendency of banning people. On the 24th of June 2024, however, Engin announced the creation of a sort of partner program, allowing arm wrestling content creators to apply for usage of East vs West footage, as long as they follow a set of guidelines. In my opinion, this is a clear step in the right direction, and I myself have since applied and have been accepted into the program. Although there's always room for improvement, as a content creator I don't mind compromise and working together with an organization like East vs West. Growing our sport is, or at least should be, everyone's main priority at the end of the day. Moving on, in 2022, the Hardanger Open, one of Scandinavia's premier arm wrestling events, set up several super matches between prominent athletes of the region and beyond. As a headliner to the event, Engin was approached to go up against longtime friend and the most accomplished puller in arm wrestling history in John Brezink. A mutual respect had formed between the two athletes throughout the decades, and both recognized each other's accomplishments in the sport, on and off the table. The super match, serving as a sort of exhibition match, was entertaining but saw Engin losing 3-0 in the end, a result that probably didn't bother Terzi too much, considering the caliber of his opponent. As a side note, Engin's longtime friend Kurt Niadzi also featured in a super match against the persistent Frode Hoagland at this event, proving he too was still at the top of his game. It's clear that by this time, Engin was starting to feel the general wear and tear of age, as well as the toll his long storied career undoubtedly took on his body. Not being one to be deterred for long, the arm wrestling table seemed to call once again, this time with an opportunity to face good friend and co-worker, Coach Ray Lipinch, at sister promotion King of the Table. In June of 2023, at King of the Table 7, Engin took a convincing victory on the right arm over Coach Ray, only giving up one round during the entire match. Meanwhile, as a tournament organizer and arm wrestling promoter, Engin decided to inextricably link some athletes to East vs West by offering them contracts. Although most athletes spoke out in support of Engin in this decision, a number of people within the community also spoke out publicly against the use of contracts. Engin, in turn, has now spoken out on the matter, saying he only wants what is in the best interest of the athletes, and that contracts are an unavoidable thing as the sport grows more. Something that sounds reasonable. After all, at the end of the day, it is an athlete's own choice whether or not to sign a specific contract. No matter which side of the argument you end up on, I personally hope we can move past this as a community sooner rather than later. Giving the athletes the financial stability that comes with contracts, as well as ensuring there is room for other organizations to grow, should be a priority, and is, as far as I can tell, the best way to grow the sport. If you could go back in time and ask a young Engin Terzi whether or not he had any aspirations of one day being the biggest tournament organizer in professional arm wrestling, I doubt he would say yes. Ultimately, I think herein lies a distinction that many people fail to realize. Rather than his success as a tournament organizer, financial or otherwise, leading to Engin loving arm wrestling, I feel it's probably the other way around. Engin's burning passion and to some degree obsession for arm wrestling throughout all these decades was the true catalyst to his current position as a tournament organizer, and also led to his current status as one of the most accomplished athletes in the sport. His involvement in facilitating what is in all likelihood one of the greatest or the greatest event arm wrestling has ever seen, on this scale at least, has clearly been felt by competitors and athletes alike. Whether or not you agree with the man on a personal level, or even if you don't like the tournaments he organizes, to me it seems impossible to deny the net benefit he has caused towards the growth of our beloved sport. I can only hope Engin, and by extension East vs West, stay present in our sport and continue to grow within it. If on top of that Mr. Terzi and his organization keeps adapting to an ever-changing online landscape and overall zeitgeist, the sky is truly the limit, and Engin Terzi might receive his proverbial arm wrestling sainthood, after all. But hey, what do I know, right? I'm just a talking arm. This video was a massive undertaking and took a lot of painstaking research, writing, recording, and editing. I only ask that you watch it in the spirit that it's intended, and while you are free to criticize or tear it apart in any way, keep in mind that I did the utmost to stay objective throughout. Massive thanks to Neil Pickup and Eric Roussin for filling in some gaps in my knowledge, and all the Armians, Fingerfolk, and anyone watching. Your support means a lot. Finally, thank you to Engin Terzi for providing me with some insights into his life and career, and for understanding what I want to accomplish by making this. Arm Historian, out.